All right. You are listening to Castles and Cryptids, where the castles are haunted and the cryptids are cryptic as fuck. And
I'm picking cat hair off my mic.
up at cat hair.
Yeah, just
Gordo is here in spirit, even if he's not
yeah.
behind the laptop. If you're new here, Gordo is the cat.
The cat.
The cat mascot.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he's Kelsey's, and I'm Alanna, as always.
Yeah. That would make me Kelsey then.
Can you tell us apart? When people start new podcasts, it's hard for me sometimes,
Yeah.
but we do have a little bit of a different accent.
Yeah. I think we do okay.
Welcome to where we unleash our worst Canadian accents. All right, it is episode 94. I am much more confident about that this week than last week. I was like, it's this day. You're like, no, that's today. This comes out next
Yeah.
week. I was like, and I left it all in.
Did you? I love
I was
it.
like, it's beautiful. My confusion. I'm sorry. I think it's relatable, hopefully. Hopefully charmingly chaotic. But
I hope
yeah.
so, yeah.
Oh, I gotta leave in sometimes bloopers and stuff are funny. Somebody says a word
Yeah.
wrong and then we just giggle about it. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot of Biff roasting going on
Yes.
last week.
Did you tell Pat about the Biff roast?
I did just, I think
I
earlier
love it.
today.
What did he have to
And,
say about Biff roast?
well, he giggled. And I joked about how, it's Frost. We could call you, because his character name, and often his like handle on Xbox, whatever, will be Eric and Frost. Like that's one
Yeah.
of his go-to character names. And I was like, you could be Eric and Frost.
Roast.
And he was like, well, surprisingly, when he plays that new Harry Potter game, Harry Potter
Oh,
Legends or whatever
Legacy?
it's called.
I think it's
Legacy, thank
Legacy.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And he's like, it pronounces it perfectly. Erican. I'm like, well, that's good because it shouldn't be that hard. It's literally like
Yeah.
Eric,
Yeah.
basically. But names are hard, y'all. We all know that. Everyone's got a name they've been called before by accident and whatever.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I get Elena, that kind of thing. Alanna a lot, which is not really wrong, but but a lot of people
Yeah.
pronounce it
I
more
get a lot of
Alanna.
I get a lot of Chelsea's. I get
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's probably the one I've heard most. For me, it's like spelling. People
Mm-hmm.
like some people spell it IE at the end. I've seen
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I've had somebody try and spell it like the sea, like SEA at the end. I was like the sea, like the ocean? And I was like,
I
okay.
feel
I'm
like I
like,
have seen that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
pronunciations, like other than Chelsea, people normally will say my name right. It's like in spelling. You see they like KEL and then it's like awkward pause and you're like SIE.
I think
And
I had
then
a
they're like,
brain fart
oh
where I
no,
almost
SEY. It's SEY.
like I do work with a Kelly and I have a friend named Kelly.
Uh,
So I think in my head the other day I might have got it mixed up and then I was like, oh, I think I almost said Kelly, but I was talking about you. I was like, it's close. But
yeah.
like I have those kind of senior moments where like transpose a word with another word or but then I was like, oh my god, that's awful. I was like, because then I'll make fun of my dad a little bit here, who doesn't usually listen, but whatever. I would tell it to him. He would be like, he sometimes spell my name Alanna with one N on like my birthday cards or something, and I'd be like,
Uh,
2 N's, Dad, 2 N's. You named me. And he's like, well, I work with Alanna with one N, so sometimes I just see
oh,
that more
yeah.
often and I just accidentally do it. And I'm like, okay, that's
Sure.
sure, Dad, you're too young to be given these senior moments because he's always made that mistake on occasion. I'd be like, oh my God, Dad. But it's just silly little grievances.
Yeah.
It doesn't really. It's fine. I don't have daddy issues. We're okay. We called him Dadu a lot of the time. I don't know why.
Dadu.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from. But sometimes we just occasionally call him Eugene too, so maybe that's a little less cute. Yep, that's my paw, Eugene.
Yeah, he likes all of our posts on Facebook.
That's
Woo,
right.
thank
We
you.
talked about that.
Yeah, him and
Oh.
Pat are like the notorious. I post something, and then like 20 minutes later, I go on, and I'm like, notification. I'm like, it's probably Pat and Alana's dad, like in the post. And then I click on it, it's like, yup.
My supportive guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of things we did mention last week, when I was editing, we were on some. Oh, it wasn't really on a TV tangent. You were talking about how the lindworm came up in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and then you
Oh,
were
yeah.
like, I think you were talking. You were like, yeah, I like Prince Caspian or whatever, and then you said I love Ben Barnes, and and I was like, when I was editing, I was like, oh my God, I kind of just ignored her and talked about whatever else we were talking about. And you said it once or twice, and I didn't mean to, but then it was funny. I'm looking on there's a movie right by Pat's place at the coffee table, and I'm like, oh, new movie or one he wants to watch, or he's got so many DVDs, Blu-rays,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's The Seventh Son? Yeah. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
who's in this? Oh, Ben Barnes. Oh. Isn't that a weird
Yeah.
little synchronicity?
Is he in that with Nicolas Cage? Isn't it Nicolas Cage in that movie too?
Is that who it was? I literally
Somebody
just looked
else, I
at it
think, is in
too.
that. Yeah.
I don't think it's like a super well. Sorry, I was really close to the mic there. So not super well known. Okay, it's Jeff Bridges. Oh, it's like the Big
Oh.
Lebowski cast. Jeff Bridges, Julianne Moore, um, Ben Barnes, Alicia Vikander, and Kit Harington. Hmm. It was a fantasy film, 2014.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah, I mean, we watch a lot of. He likes fantasy a lot.
Yeah. I'm
I don't
pretty
mind a
sure
good
I saw that movie in
sci-fi.
theaters with my old roommate or something.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
barely remember it coming out, but we own it apparently, and we're probably gonna rewatch it. So that's just funny how it
Yeah.
came up again. I was like, oh, I'll have to tell Kelsey that. Guess I'm gonna watch a little Ben Barnes movie.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the Shadow and Bone season 2 to come out.
Oh, was he in that?
Yeah, he's like a kind of
Oh,
villain, I think he's supposed to be. I think his
I like.
character's called the Darkling. It's like his
Oh, that's fun.
but yeah. It's just funny to watch any of the behind the scenes stuff cuz I think he's about 15 to 20 years older than the rest of the main cast. So they kind of make fun of him for
Oh.
being old and you're like, "Oh god."
Oh my God. He's also in
Yeah.
something just called Dorian Gray. I don't know if I saw that, but
Yeah. That
familiar
was
with the story.
other than uh like the Chronicles of Narnia movie that he was in starred in Prince Caspian. That was probably one of the first things I saw him in was Dorian Gray.
Okay. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
like my age, maybe 30s. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, Cabinet of Curiosities.
Yeah,
That's
he was
good.
in the
Who's
one
in that?
episode of that. It was pretty
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Anyway, that was just call back to last week.
Yeah.
That was, yeah. We hope you liked that. That was a fun episode. I had fun. You know,
Yeah.
when you're editing and you're like, kind of like, oh yeah, that was fun. You're like laughing. It was good. I cut out all the most aggressive sniffs that I could because poor Kelsey was still a little sniffly. So I hope
Yeah.
that all went well. But we're
Hopefully
here.
it's better. Yeah, I haven't been. It's mostly at work because we're doing a bunch of construction there, so it's,
Yeah.
they're ripping off like panels off the walls and stuff like that. So it's been pretty dusty
Oh, they
and
just
stuff.
keep it open and just start tearing it down, eh?
Yeah, we're in renovation for like 3 months.
Oh God.
This is week 3, I think. Uh,
Oh no.
Closing out week 3.
That
And
sucks.
yeah, they've done quite a bit. Like they've painted a lot of stuff.
That's really
Yeah.
weird. You're just like, oh, we'll just get to open. It's like you're having to drive through when you have to drive through construction. You're like, can't this just be done?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of sucks, but
Yeah.
it'll be really bad when they move on to our employee lounge and staff room. That's going to be really annoying because you're kind of
Oh,
stuck in there eating lunch and everything. And I don't know what all they're doing to it, but yeah.
that's bizarre. You would think they could, like, I don't know, think of a different solution somewhere else.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know.
close down part of the store or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird.
Now, anything to keep operating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my lord. Um. Well, I don't know if there's anything. I always write down my fun things I learn when I listen
Yeah.
to podcasts and on the internet all the week. I was trying to grab like a Scottish one, but I couldn't really find anything at
Oh.
the last minute when I was like, oh yeah, it's Scottish crimes. Even though I have a source here that is a whole, it's called a Clanlands Almanac. We'll get to
Oh.
it. But I did hear something that I thought was kind of interesting, and it was on, um, oh, it's a good old podcast that's kind of in our little lady pod squad. They started around the same time as us, and
Oh.
we interact with them on Instagram all the time. They're called Homespun Haints. So
Yeah.
I have to shout them out because that's where I got this, and it was actually a really good episode and very interesting because they told this whole story about it, where the term serendipity comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
I've heard of
also they
that.
talked. It was a little bit too like serendipity versus synchronicity, and how they're like a little bit different. Which I can't explain well, so I'm not going to try. But they told a story. I guess the word comes from a story which was like called the Three Princes of Serendip. So like that's where the
Oh.
serendipity word comes from.
Okay.
But and I really wouldn't explain the story very well either, other than the three princes had to like follow tracks in a desert, and then it had to do with them using deductive reasoning to be like, oh, this was a camel and it went this way, or it had a
Mm.
lame foot. Like they were looking at the tracks and stuff, and
Yeah.
it was kind of like the first time that people talked about that kind of deductive reasoning in like a it's like a really old Persian story or whatever, and it
Uh-huh.
inspired the old writer Voltaire, which I mean he's from I think way long ago, so I don't really know any of his stuff, but that apparently in turn even inspired the writer of Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle. And
Oh,
so like
cool.
yeah, it kind of like inspired the kind of character that has that amazing, deductive reasoning and intellect, and like
Yeah,
that kind of
that's
character
cool.
that knows everything. And I was like, I didn't know any of that. Like, I feel a little bit more knowledgeable now. So also there
Yeah.
was a dog made nipple tracks in one of the stories. I was just like, it was all over the place. It was really worth a listen.
Got some sagging.
It was a pregnant dog.
Oh, okay. It's like
It was interesting, I'm
got
telling you.
little short legs and a
Yeah,
little
a wiener
dog
dog.
out in the desert, just trying to get along with
I
the
like come home
camels.
over dinner, I'm like ranting at my family about stories and nipple tracks, and they're looking at me like, "You learned what on a podcast today?" Yeah.
Anyway,
What are we talking about?
we have some Scottish crimes. Going back to the
They have a crazy history.
yeah, going back to some of our international true crime episodes where we pick a country or a place and then find two cases to talk about. It's been a while since we did one.
Yeah. What was the last one?
I don't even know. It's quite a while ago. I have to bring up our episode list. Episode list order.
Because hostage crimes was, we both did two different countries, so that wasn't, but that was interesting.
Yeah.
Those were big ones for those countries.
Uh, the episode 80, we did like Mexico crimes and Day of the Dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Well, I picked this one, and it was funny. You were like, I
yeah,
was going to suggest maybe just, not just an international one, but sometimes,
pick a
you know,
country. Yeah,
it's easier to pick a country than to pick a specific theme
yeah.
sometime. Yeah, and then I was kind of trying to pick something, and I was like, yeah. We haven't
Mm-hmm.
done this, but we've done Scottish folklore,
Yeah.
which we talked about last week, actually, because you had to relook up your cryptid that was the drowny horse, and I was talking about a drowny horse cryptid that's also a naked guy with a violin sometimes.
Yeah. There's some callbacks going back in folklore, but a lot of the countries have similar creatures and things like that. Slight
Yeah,
variations off them. Yeah.
a lot of scary horse dudes that are
Yeah. Just trying to trick you into being able to drown you, I guess.
yeah, or they're like super strong centaur looking guys that also have some sort of, what's the one from the Doulahan or whatever? Didn't he have a big bone scythe or something?
Yeah,
He's like
'cause
half
basically
horse.
the headless horseman kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creeper. Oh, pardon me.
Well,
I'm excited.
yeah, I can kick
Take me
us
to
off.
Scotland.
For my case, I ended up picking it literally only because of the name, the I guess the moniker that the case has been given, because it makes me laugh, I guess, for the fact it's called the World's End Murders. And it's named,
Oh.
the case itself is named basically after the pub that was associated with the case. And
Okay. That makes sense when you said World's End. I was like, that's got to be a pub, right?
yeah, but there's also a movie, anybody that loves Edgar Wright. He is the director of like Baby Driver and Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim
Oh.
vs. the World. And he also directed a movie called The World's End. And I think
Okay.
it's one of the funniest movies he's ever done. And
I'm so familiar.
it's based on a pub crawl, and like Martin Freeman's in it, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, of course, and it's part of the
Martin
Cornetto
Freeman, the
trilogy.
guy who's in everything, but I can
Yeah.
never remember his name.
Oh, I get. Uh, so they're all in it, and it's part of the They called it the Cornetto trilogy, so it goes Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and then The World's End. Like that's the Cornetto trilogy.
Oh, okay, yeah. I like
Yeah,
the first two. I must have seen the third one then.
I
I
think you
feel like
have. Yeah, I love it. I think it's hilarious. And
it's
yeah,
the
so
pub
and
crawl.
yeah, they basically go on a pub crawl and slowly they realize that the town that they grew up in, because they all moved away from it and had successful lives or whatever. So they all go back to the pub crawl to try and finish the pub crawl that they couldn't finish when they were like 19, because it's going to like all these different bars, and they all got too wasted and basically ended up passing out before they completed it. At the World's
Okay.
End is the final one they're supposed to go to. So they go back as adults and are like, we're gonna do this whole pub crawl, and it slowly devolves to everybody in the town being like off, like they're not quite themselves, and
Okay.
everything's kind of slightly strange, and then suddenly it becomes basically that aliens have replaced all the people living in the town. So then they're just so
Nice.
then while they're all pretty much drunk, they're trying to complete this pub crawl to not let on that they know that they're surrounded by aliens. So they just keep going to like bars and downing beers and then being like, okay, next one, alien invasion.
Uh,
Like, yeah.
oh yeah. Those guys are funny.
Or the pub that they're trying to get to at the end is the World's End. And then in the
Of
movie,
course.
the world ends up almost ending. And then I just laughed because
Right.
this was called The World's End Murders, and it's a pub that's called The World's End. And I was like, oh shit.
Oh, so it's a real one.
Yeah,
Really
I
in
guess
no.
so.
Ah. It's probably been
Yeah.
around for like 100 years at least.
Yeah.
Holy shit. They do that so well too. Like the with the zombies. It's a really funny
Hmm.
zombie movie. And then like I like
Yeah.
Hot Fuzz too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically
So
along that same kind of line, except it's aliens instead of zombies or whatever.
oh my
And
god.
or I guess robots. They're kind of like robot aliens, I guess, but
I love a good
it's pretty
funny
funny.
alien movie. Like there's not that
Yeah.
many of them, but there's Paul, which
Yeah,
has
they're in Paul too.
okay, okay. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
isn't it the same people? Sort of. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I highly recommend it. Um I'm sure this case will be nothing like the movie. But
And that's the last funny thing we're gonna say. No.
so the World's End Murders is the name given for a case where I think it's in, is it Edinburgh or Edinburgh? How do you pronounce that? I didn't look it up. I didn't have this.
um, how do I say it? I always think
Edinburgh?
Edinburgh. Yeah, Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. So it's the name given to two girls actually that were murdered in Edinburgh in October of
Oh,
1977, and
ooh,
the
the 70s.
case. Mhm.
Sorry.
The case was given the name because the girls were last seen leaving the World's End pub.
Oh,
Hmm.
damn.
Yeah, that was
And
the
they always
last
have to give it a
place they were seen.
catchy name. I
Yeah.
mean, not necessarily catchy, but just sort of so you can remember it. I find that
Hmm.
the newspapers.
Yeah. So on the night of October 15th, 1977, the two 17-year-old girls, Christine Eady and Helen Scott, were seen leaving the World's End pub at closing time just after 11. And
Closing time.
time,
I had to. I'll
right?
stop
Yeah.
it.
The friends had been out celebrating their new jobs and the start of what they saw as their adult lives because they're 17. They got like
Oh,
really good new jobs. They're both excited. Uh,
aw.
yeah.
That's
And
amazing and sad.
right, they
I'm like,
were,
they're only 17.
yeah. They were
Shit.
out with two of their other friends, Jacqueline and Tony. Uh,
Ooh.
so yeah, Tony, it's Tony with an I, so I assume female.
Oh, Jackie and
Uh,
Tony.
Jackie and Tony, yeah. So after Tony and Jacqueline decided to leave the pub in order to go to a house party. Christine, Edie, and Helen Scott instead chose to leave the pub. Like, at first they stayed at the pub a little while after Tony and Jacqueline left, and then they decided to leave because they assumed that their parents were, like, expecting them home soon, and they decided to go back to their houses. I think they were planning on walking.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're leaving together. The buddy
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, they did leave together. So that, according to edinburghnews.scotsman.com, it's the only place I found this by, because it said that the pair were met by policeman John Rafferty, who stopped to help when Christine stumbled on the cobblestones. And it said he would later tell his colleagues how he watched the two young friends disappear into the night with two shadowy strangers. So they weren't alone.
What?
That's the only place I found that, because other sources put them just at the pub and that they weren't seen again after that, and this says that a cop saw them after, so I'm not sure.
That is very odd sounding. And
Yeah.
and supposedly if it happened, the cop helped one of them from falling and then saw them
Yeah,
go
stopped
off.
to help Christine when she slipped or something on the cobblestones when she's walking. Yeah.
Wonder if they were with people why they didn't help them then, if that's the case.
Right? Yeah, that's a little weird. A group of 4 people and a cop stops to help somebody that stumbles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Helen's parents ended up contacting Tony and Jacqueline after, obviously, their daughter didn't come home in the morning. The girls told them that they had left them the night before and had left them at the pub. So the two families gathered together at the Scott's home to wait for more information and to see if the girls showed up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, nothing, like, they didn't get any information, and not too long after that, in the early morning, 80's naked body was found in Gosford Bay. It's kind of like a lake, like, not very big, maybe more pond like, or river. It was
Oh.
found by a
Bay sounds
couple.
big, but okay.
Yeah. It was found by a couple that was walking nearby, and then
Oh.
not too long after that, Scott's body was found also unclothed 6 miles away from where 80's body was found, in a corn stubble field. I don't know what corn stubble is. The stubble
Very
of corn.
short corn, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Baby corn.
That's where they grow the baby corn.
So I watched something recently that apparently on, like, regular corn stalks, the baby corn, like, grows on the top of regular corn or something. Like, each regular corn will grow a baby
Oh.
corn, and I was like, oh, I was like, and they're like, the people I was watching were like, yeah, mind blown that it's not like a separate thing. It's just every corn has a baby corn. It's like,
I
okay.
mean, we've grown corn here a couple times, and it does get really long and tapered, and then
Yeah.
we see it at the store. Oftentimes, it's quite cut off at the ends for you already, or well, not when it's on the cob though. Interesting. So they just use
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
nubbin
just the
at the end.
last few inches, yeah.
Just the tip.
Get
Oh
a can of
God.
tips. Tips on. Gross. I
That's
hate
what she
baby
said.
corn. It's, like, so gross.
Oh
Never liked
really?
it. I've never liked it. Anyway.
Texture thing, maybe.
Yeah, just um
Those tiny
back to,
kernels.
back to this depressing story. So when both girls' bodies were found, they had both been beaten. They were found gagged, tied up, and there was evidence that they had both been raped and both strangled.
Oh my God.
And yeah,
And they were together.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
There had been no attempts by their killer to conceal or even hide the bodies. Like, they were out in the open, very easily found.
But
And
in two different places, right?
yeah, 6 miles apart.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He used a different approach, or they, whoever the
Yeah.
killers were.
So it ends up going cold basically. And in late 1977, so the same year, police conducted a high profile investigation that ended up consisting of over 500 suspects and over 13,000 statements from the public.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. However,
Statements. Okay.
yeah. However, with all of this, they were still unable to identify the murderer, and the case at the time was really popular in the media, and a picture of the girls that was taken at a photo booth was actually used by police when they were asking for information. Um, I couldn't find this picture, so I'm not exactly sure
Weird.
about that.
So that was
It
like the
didn't come
only.
up.
Yeah, that's not good. The only available photo you have is the photo booth
Yeah,
photo. That's not going to be the best quality.
no, but they did have other pictures, and I never found this photo booth photo. I did put
Hmm.
pictures in the drive, and even the one that they used in like newspapers that circulated doesn't really look. It doesn't look like it's from a photo booth, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay. Maybe it
Um,
never got digitized or whatever.
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
The media reported that several witnesses had told the police that they had seen Helen Scott and Christine Eady sitting near the public phone at the bar when they were still there, and that they were sitting near the phone and talking with two different men. So
Okay.
that's that supposed group of four. However, neither man were ever located or being able to be identified by the police. And because of this, speculation of these two men's involvement increased when it was revealed that the knots used to tie the girls' hands behind their backs were two different types. So they
Hmm.
each had their hands tied behind their backs, but using different knots.
Oh no. It's like when
So
you
that
pick
kind
up
of,
two girls at the bar, but you're arguing over like which one you want,
yeah.
and then they each go off with one, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that MO.
Now,
It's scary.
so, again, with this case not really having any new leads, in May of 1978, police unfortunately announced that they were scaling back the investigation.
Oh no.
So, yeah, from 1978 to 1997, there's nothing that happens on the case. So, 9 years.
God.
Or no, more than 9 years.
That's so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, really sad.
And
I
I'm
can't
hoping not
now.
the end of what you're gonna tell
No,
me.
no.
Because I'm just be like, God damn it, why?
That'd be brutal and very short. Uh, so, in 1997, the police ended up kind of forming a cold case unit, and they began reviewing the case, which I love. I love cold case units. They're the real like MVPs.
Oh man, the work they do. Yeah, so hard and just so time consuming. They just have to be so
Mm-hmm.
dogged and they're, yeah,
Yeah.
resilient.
So, because it had been so many years, with I think 19 years, it must have been, yeah, 78 to 97, 19 years. With improved DNA profiling technology, they were able to isolate the
Yes.
DNA profile samples of two males that were found on Scott's raincoat. Like, so there was DNA of two different men on her raincoat.
Okay.
So they had their samples, and the DNA of the original 500 suspects that they believed, like, back in 1977, they were also like investigated basically, and I think recontacted for DNA samples if they hadn't already provided them at some point.
Holy
Uh,
shit, 500? Wow.
yeah, so they could also be analyzed and compared to these new samples they had gotten off the raincoat. But sadly, there was no matches between these
Ugh.
samples, and once again, the case went cold. This time, still a number of years, but just 6. Not like it's just 6, but
Yeah, for the family, it just must feel like
right?
eternity. Yeah, for the
Yeah.
families, I guess. Sorry.
So by October of 2003, the BBC Crime Watch program was released. I think it's kind
Oh,
of having very little information about it. I'd say it'd probably be similar to like Unsolved or like America's Most Wanted, like just kind of telling you about the
yeah,
case. There's a bit of a recreation or
sounds like
reconstruction
it.
of the crime. Here's some photos. If you have any information, call this number. So after this aired in 2003, the police ended up receiving a phone call from a man who claimed that he had been walking near Gosford Bay on the night of the murders, and he had seen a suspicious vehicle, like in that area.
Okay.
He said that it was a works van. Uh, I don't know if it means like public works or just a company van.
Right. Some kind
Um,
of logo on it or
mhm.
name or something, probably.
All right, so he had seen this vehicle. He said it was driving erratically. That's probably why
Oh,
he had noticed it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
obviously, he had not previously come forward. I think they ended up following up with this, but I don't really have any information about that vehicle. Uh,
Okay. Didn't go anywhere.
yeah, a vehicle gets mentioned, but I don't know if it's supposed to be that same one.
Okay.
Uh, After the program aired, police in total received about 130 calls from different witnesses who had previously not contacted the police with any information, which blows my mind because it was so well reported in the news. You'd
Uh,
think these people would have come forward instead of waiting.
yeah, I would hope. I wonder
Like,
if they just kind of said anything you might know, even if you don't think it's anything significant, like maybe they just made another
yeah,
plate and people thought, okay, well, I don't know if this is anything, but I guess I'll
yeah,
better report it. That sucks.
yeah,
That'd be a hard thing to have on your shoulders. And
yeah.
I don't know. Depending on what you
Uh,
saw.
yeah. So, also in 2003, the press ended up reporting that police had enlisted the help of Forensic Science Service, FSS, to try to determine the identity of this unknown DNA samples. And as the sample was a partial match, actually, to over 200 profiles in the National DNA Database. So, like, when they were doing those DNA samples, it was like it kept coming up partial matches. It
Oh,
wasn't actual like matches. So,
that's frustrating.
yeah.
Um, I was listening to quick anecdote, no tangent. No, I was just listening to a quick episode earlier where someone was telling their personal like adoption story to the host of the show and
Oh,
stuff, and then she was like saying how she got was able to get her birth certificate and there was names on it, and so she thought she tracked down like her dad, but then when they got the test back, it was like it comes back in like percentages apparently, so it'd be like it's not like
um,
just says he is your dad or he isn't, but it was like this one was like there was basically like 0.0% chance. And so
oh,
that must have been hard and stuff like that. And I don't know, that's just what it made me think of because it's like, you don't get like a concrete, clear answer
yeah.
one
They
way or
keep
the
talking
other.
about that on the one radio station I listen to. They did a few over the course of a couple different weeks where it was like found family, like how did you find
Oh,
relatives or
yeah.
whatever through DNA testing, or did you, and then I think the next day they did the flip side. It was like, how did you find out you weren't related to your family through
Oh
DNA
my
testing
gosh.
of like,
Those
and
stories are so
lots of
crazy.
lots of people were calling in saying like their whoever they thought their dad was or their mom was had raised them their entire lives and since passed away,
Yeah.
and like found out that person wasn't your parent.
Like they
One
do
person,
23andMe or something, and then they're like,
yeah,
it says I'm like Puerto Rican, and like, ha ha ha, that's funny because we're Italian or something like that, right?
yeah. The one person called in and said that their grandfather, basically, grandfather or their like father. I think
Yeah.
it was their grandfather, because this person was like 78 and found out that their parents weren't their parents. And it was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
Jesus, like, oh, that's brutal.
So you
Like,
can't even maybe ask them about it because they're not even with us anymore. You're
yeah,
like,
like, yeah,
Didn't somebody in true crime find out that way, like Ted Bundy or someone? I could be wrong.
yeah,
Find out that they weren't. Oh, my mom wasn't my mother when someone asked them about it, like a reporter or something. They're like, what?
yeah, there was a case of that. I do remember that. I can't remember who it was, though. But you're
Oh,
right. Somebody,
I can try and confirm. I
yeah,
know it's somebody I
somebody,
should know.
yeah, I know somebody ended up, their parent was not their parent.
Was Ted Bundy raised by his grandma? Yes. Yeah, to hide the fact that he was an illegitimate child, Bundy was raised as the adopted son of his grandparents and told that his mother was his sister. I think it's him that found out, just like in the
Hmm.
most random setting, like, "What?" You're like,
Yeah,
"Oop, awkward."
right? Um, all right. So, yeah, they have all these partial matches. So that brings us to the gentleman who I'm just gonna say did it. Because fuck him. Even if he
This
didn't
is
do
her
this,
opinion.
he did enough shit that, like, fuck him. So,
All right.
his name
Permission to
is,
say fuck him.
yes,
Yeah.
his name is Angus Sinclair. So,
An Angus.
mhm. How dare you sully that
I was almost
name?
gonna be an Angus. I narrowly escaped it by just being born without having a penis. That's a kind of
On,
cow. I like it. It's a good name. It's a very good
yeah,
Scottish name. No
yeah.
offense to any Anguses out there. I wouldn't have minded.
On November 25th, 2004, Angus Sinclair, who lived in Edinburgh at the time of the murders, was actually detained in connection with the murders. It was kind of confusing at first about how he was detained, but I think it was after his DNA, which had previously been collected. I think they were just running all these samples, and then his came up as a partial match, and then maybe they got a better sample or something, but they got a good match to him as being one of the
Okay.
unknown DNA samples at the scene. And when they started questioning him, they ended up collecting a fresh DNA sample from him through like mouth swabs that they took for comparison.
Yeah.
And uh, 4 months later, 4 or 5 months later, on March 31st, 2005, Sinclair was arrested and charged with the murder and rape of Edie and Scott in 1977. And at the time, he didn't really make a plea or any sort of declaration about whether or not he was guilty. Didn't really say much of anything, and he was placed in custody.
And charged
So,
with both of them?
yeah,
For both? Okay, so
because
it was
so they
found.
could place
Right.
place him at one of the scenes. So I think they charged
Hmm.
him with both. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, in August of 2007, he ended up starting a trial. Which, according to Wikipedia, this is what he's.
August of 2007? Wow, that took a
Yeah.
while. Holy shit. Sorry, it
Mm-hmm.
just like hit me.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, he was
That was
custody for a little over 2 years.
right. Well, I had my kid
But
in July of 2007. I'm like, that's like just 16 years ago, and it happened in
yeah,
77? Like, holy shit.
yeah. Um,
It's
I
like when
will
the first
say,
Star Wars movie came out. That's crazy.
even though he was like in custody during that time, he had a bunch of previous crimes, so don't feel bad about him being in prison. Um,
Oh, no.
so
Yeah, I won't.
yeah. According to Wikipedia, This is basically what they say, what he said. Inga Sinclair says what happened. He says indictment, or what he said, alleged, this is from Wikipedia, that on the night of the 15th through to the 16th of October, 1977, Sinclair and Gordon Hamilton, who's
Gordon!
Sinclair. Yeah.
That's such a
Right?
Scottish name.
Gordo, are you Scottish? Uh,
Oh, was his
is he
namesake Scottish? Probably.
probably,
Well, Scottish descent in his Canadianness.
yeah.
Gordon,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, Gordon Hamilton is actually Sinclair's brother-in-law, and
Oh,
Hamilton had actually died in 1996. So he's already dead by the time this trial's taking place.
okay.
And so Sinclair says that he and Hamilton persuaded or forced the girls into a motor vehicle and held them against their will in St. Mary's Street near the World's End pub. It was alleged that he then drove Christine Eady to Gosford Bay, Aberley, and there or elsewhere attacked, stripped, and gagged her with her underwear, then tied her wrists, all before raping her and then killing her by restricting her breathing. He,
There or elsewhere. Okay.
yeah, they keep saying there or elsewhere in this, and I was like, why? So confusing.
He doesn't
Uh,
remember.
right?
Ugh.
He was further accused of raping and murdering Scott in the same way and driving her to a road near Haddington and in a field there or elsewhere in Edinburgh and East Lothian ended up attacking her. So basically, said the same thing. They just said
Okay.
it very annoyingly, in my opinion. Here
They
or
about to name
elsewhere.
drop all the
Here,
places it could have been.
yeah, here, there, or everywhere.
It's like when on Wine and Crime, anytime they go to the UK, they do geography. And they're like,
Yeah,
how far is it from Peniston? I'm sorry, I know I've probably
yeah.
said that before, but it does amuse me.
Uh, so Sinclair himself, because Hamilton's dead, so he's the only one they can really like get for this crime. He ended up
Yeah,
pleading finally not guilty at the end of the trial, and he ended up stating that any sexual activity between him and the girls had been consensual and that their deaths had been caused
hmm.
like solely by Gordon Hamilton alone, and he hadn't been involved in that part.
I mean, that's convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Because of
So,
course it was consensual.
right? So the jury was presented really with just a circumstantial case, as the car that Sinclair drove that night had been destroyed, so they weren't able to get any forensic evidence about like them being moved away from the pub.
Right.
And really, other than the DNA sample on the coat, which like doesn't really prove, because I mean it's just on her coat, so yeah, you could have been with them just at the pub and touched her coat, kind of thing. So
Right. It's just like
they were
trace amounts of DNA.
yeah, so they were kind of
Hmm.
pushing really hard for that. I think the defense was saying that there was little forensic evidence other than these few samples of DNA, and the DNA evidence uh was also presented that they had done rape kits on both the girls and that semen was found in both of them and it shared the same DNA profile as Sinclair.
Oh,
But
so they
he
were
had,
raped by the same person and it was probably him?
yes. But
Okay.
in his testimony, he had said that like they had had sex with both of them consensually.
Trying
So,
to, yeah,
yeah,
lesser his charges and who like
exactly.
they're not here to dispute it, so why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last evidence presented was that the semen matching Sinclair's cheek swabs that they had taken, like to get that new fresh DNA sample from him.
Fresh.
Uh
Sorry.
yeah, fresh. Uh that this was found mixed with DNA from Scott, like her blood or her DNA on Scott's coat. So because his DNA was mixed with her DNA on her coat, it could better place him at the scene that like something happened.
Oh.
And yeah, they also said that DNA obtained from Hamilton's relatives, because he had since died already, so they couldn't get his DNA, but they did get like familial matches, and they actually matched him also to semen found on both of the girls. So like both of them had
Oh.
presumably raped
Okay.
or had some form of like rape activity with both of the girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he wasn't lying that his buddy Hamilton was there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's not just throwing him under the bus, at least.
Maybe not
So
completely. Hard to say.
so
He's
by
he's
September,
tipping him towards the bus.
yeah. So by September 2007, the defense made a submission that Sinclair had no case to answer in respect to the charges libeled due to insufficiency of evidence. I had no idea what that meant
Oh God.
until I kept
Legalese.
reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, no case to answer. It means something.
Huh?
Um, Basically, the defense was contending that the Crown, like the prosecutors, had failed to prove that Sinclair had caused the actual violence or force or death against the girls, and instead they had basically also failed to prove that the sexual encounter and the semen found had not been put there consensually.
Oh, come on. How much
Yeah.
evidence do we have to have
Right. And as
before
a
it? Like,
res
I get it, like reasonable doubt, blah blah blah, but still, that's so frustrating.
especially when you find out what this guy's done. Like, if this
Mm.
judge knew about this, I'm sorry, but also fuck this judge. Uh, because as a result of this, the judge upheld this defense submission and formally acquitted Sinclair of the charges before it was able to be put to any sort of jury vote. So the jury had heard all the evidence, and before the jury could vote, the defense is like, yeah, they failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt, basically. And then the judge was like, okay, sure, and like acquitted him. Like,
Ugh,
yeah, brutal.
don't do that, because then you
Yeah.
might not be able to try him again if the double jeopardy
Hmm.
thing applies.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So after the trial concluded, which I am shocked to believe that nobody knew about this before, but it was suddenly revealed that Angus Sinclair was previously convicted of murder. He was also a known serial sexual offender, and he had not been free at the time he had been arrested and charged with this case. He had been in the middle of serving 2 life sentences when he was brought on trial for the World's End murders.
Oh,
Like,
so they found him already in jail for
yeah,
murder.
basically. Yeah, murders, rapes, being a gross person.
Well, that part's good that he's in there already. I'm gonna
Yeah,
hang on to that.
right?
But he should be in
Um,
there for these too.
yeah. It's not over yet though. It does have a happy ending. It
I'm
does have a happy
already
ending.
mad. All
So,
right. I'll stick around.
okay, I hope so.
Just leaves.
So this is kind of
Oops.
the synopsis of his prior history and brushes with the law. This is from
Mm.
Wikipedia, but I found it on other stuff too. Doesn't go into a lot of detail, but this is kind of a summary. Sinclair's first conviction occurred in 1961 at the age of 16 when he pleaded guilty and was convicted of the culpable homicide of 8-year-old Catherine Rehill, and he served 6 years in prison. Catherine Rehill
Mm.
was sexually assaulted by Sinclair at 8 years old. After this, he strangled her in his family home, so at his house, with the inner tube of a bike tire. And
Okay.
yeah, then he threw her body down a flight of stairs and told the little girl's mother that her death had been an accident because she had basically fallen down the stairs. At 16, he did this. Like a psychopath. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had a loss for words.
Yeah.
And he got 6 years?
He got 6 years in prison for that. Probably only because he was 16 at the time. Uh,
Ugh.
Jumping ahead to 1982, 5 years after the World's End murders, he pleaded guilty to 11 of 13 charges that involved various rapes and indecent assaults that were committed against young girls, and he was sentenced to life in prison. This was 5 years after their deaths. In June 2001, while still in prison, he went on trial and was given another life sentence for the murder of 17-year-old Mary Gallagher. This occurred on a footpath near the Barnhill railway station in Glasgow in November 1978, 13 months after the World's End murders. Uh,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Mary, who was 17, had been dragged into bushes, sexually assaulted, had her throat cut, and a ligature tied around her neck. Uh,
And this
just
probably happened before the.
This happened 13 months after. Yeah.
But wasn't he already in jail? Oh my god,
I
sorry.
think so, but because it was considered a cold case, I don't think anybody was running the DNA samples for it until like 1990 something. Yeah.
Oh.
Mhm.
And then DNA was better and stuff too.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Uh Again, during this time, Sinclair failed to accept any sort of responsibility for the crime. He denied all knowledge despite being found guilty by a majority verdict, and faced with the reality that the chances of a DNA sample matching anyone other than Sinclair were 1,000,000,000 to 1. Um,
Don't.
just
Yeah.
trying to weasel his way out. Yeah. Sinclair
Does he like
was
those odds? They're not good.
1,000,000,000 to 1. Yeah. Sinclair was only caught for the 1978 murder. So the Mary Gallagher's murder, after a cold case review by police revealed the presence of new DNA evidence not uncovered during the initial investigation, just like this one was.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's kind of his history. Like I said, he's an asshole. Fuck him. Uh,
Yeah. Big
so
time.
if the judge knew all that and still acquitted him, fuck that judge. Because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That you would not think he was capable of doing that, and that they could argue insufficient evidence when,
Yeah, sometimes I don't
like,
understand why they have to exclude something because it doesn't
yeah,
have to do with the crime when it clearly paints their propensity
yeah,
for doing that kind of crime. You're like,
yeah,
you've done it
exactly.
before. Yeah, I think it should almost always be relevant if they've done something like that before.
It's not like you're throwing in there being like, oh, he's being charged with rape and murder. Well, he has overdue library books and parking tickets, and he stole a pack of gum from a store. No, if you
Well,
have
his boss
somebody
doesn't
that's,
like him. Yeah.
yeah, it's one thing to bring up somebody's past history, I guess, or background, and have it be little stupid shit like that when you're talking about something big and you're trying to paint them as a bad person. But when somebody's being
Yeah.
charged with murder and rape, and they literally have murder and rape in their background that they've been convicted for, that is relevant. Like,
Yeah, if there was a jury, they should probably know
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Oi, oi,
yeah, so
oi.
that's what was going back. So back to his acquittal. This obviously drew widespread criticism in the press, and because there had been such a level of public interest in the case, um, and because it was like 30, I think almost 30 exactly years old when he was acquitted, it kind of blew up, and
Yeah.
uh, the interest in the case, the Crown's case against Sinclair actually ended up being explained and reviewed in Parliament. So like the lawyers basically went to Parliament and like explained their side of the case about why they had charged him with this, which was kind of
Whoa.
weird to do. Um yeah. So because of this, this review of the case by Parliament was kind of seen as being criticizing of the decision of the trial judge, which was not good, but also, like, it was a stupid decision by the judge. Um, and
Yeah,
it,
like like
yeah,
judges aren't infallible or
yeah,
perfect, and that's why you have the different levels of government.
mm-hmm,
Like, yeah, we have similar thing here where we have parliament, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, it's not all the power should be in one person's hands.
right. So as a result, many judges kind of went back and forth about the case. Some of them agreed with the trial judge, some of them didn't. An interest in the outcome of the case led to systemic changes in criminal procedure. You already mentioned
Oh,
it, but the rules of double jeopardy were reviewed, as well as
oh,
the admissibility of bad character evidence and similar fact evidence in criminal trials. This was all reviewed, in part because of
oh,
this, not solely
wow.
because of it, but partly because of it.
And we
So
were just, yeah, that's what we are
yeah,
just talking about.
exactly. In March of 2011, the Scottish Parliament passed the Double Jeopardy Scotland Act in 2011 that makes various provisions for circumstances when a person convicted or acquitted of an offense can be prosecuted anew. Dun dun dun. I kept in anew, so it was fancy.
I
Uh,
like it, yeah.
so they're
Your ass
basically
going to
saying,
jail.
yeah, that's why I'm like, it has a happy ending. Stay with me. Uh, in 2012, the Crown Office issued a press statement saying that the police had been instructed to reopen the case, and in 2013, 3 judges took 8 days to hear a bid from prosecutors for a second trial to be put against Sinclair for the murders.
Wow.
Uh, mm-hmm.
Crazy. He's going
So,
back.
yeah. Meanwhile, this whole time, he's still in prison at least. Um,
That's true.
yeah.
Ow.
So in April 2014, the Crown was granted permission to bring this new prosecution against Sinclair. With the help of new DNA, they could more accurately show how Sinclair's DNA ended up on the girls and at the scene. So
Mhm.
they basically were able to prove that it couldn't have just been like transferred, just him touching. Like it was like the percentage of like the mixture and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like you were there at the time of their murders and their rapes. Like that was it.
Mhm. Good.
Um the
Fuck him.
ligatures he used to tie up Helen and Christine were re-examined using new forensic technique called crime light, and this found microscopic traces of Sinclair's DNA, like inside the knots in the rope, proving that he must have been the one who tied them up. So like,
Wow.
yeah,
Crime light, like a light,
crime light.
Ligth.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
know what this is called. Yeah.
Not
Is
like
it one
crime
of like
light, like a
those?
diet crime.
No. Crime light. Light crime.
Yeah.
Uh I don't know if it's different from like that. Is it like
Luminol or
chromiography or
whatever.
whatever that they put like a substance in and then it does the chemical makeup of that substance? I don't know if it's too
Oh,
yeah. See it on
I
forensic
don't
files
know.
all the time. They're like boo, and then it comes back and it's like it's 10% this and 4% that. And I'm like, cool.
Wow.
Um Yeah. So the second trial started in October 2014. During the trial, the jury visited actually the scene of the murders, and
Oh,
forensic,
field trip.
yeah, isn't that fun? A forensic soil specialist examined soil samples that had been taken from 1977 from Helen Scott's bare feet, which became important evidence. I
Oh,
don't know if I ever mention it again. I don't know how it's so important, but okay. Uh,
it was important. We know that.
it was important. Uh, in November 2014, Sinclair was found guilty of the murders of Helen Scott and Christine Eady nearly 40 years after their tragic deaths. He was the first person in Scotland to stand trial for a second time for the same crime under the new double jeopardy laws. Yeah,
Damn.
he's a winner. He won something. He's number one. He's
'Cause
number
I'm
one.
a winner. Sorry, that
Yeah.
always I always think of that. I think it's from that 70s show, Seth Green.
Uh,
He's like this recurring character that's always like competing with Eric.
oh.
And then like, I'm winning because I'm a winner. I don't know. It's terrible, but I'm so good.
uh, I love this because the jury also found him guilty after only 2.5 hours. I'm surprised it wasn't just 5 minutes. Uh,
Yeah, 2.5 hours. That's pretty quick.
I heard something on Crimes and Consequences. I'm sure it was that, or maybe it was Bailey Sarian, and they were talking, and she's like, "Can you imagine if they just like handed down a life sentence in like 5 minutes?" And then everybody was like, "That was kind of quick." And I think they said even in the jury room, one of the witnesses came back and was like, "Yeah, we were all like, we can't just tell them we decided that so quickly." So they
Yeah.
ended up all sitting around and basically just snacking, talking for the next hour and a half, and like eating cookies, drinking coffee, and then they were like, "Okay, we're ready." It was
Nice.
like, yeah. Like,
I think the shortest I've ever heard of was like 45 minutes. I was like, whoa.
yeah. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty baller because I always wondered what's the shortest amount of time that it's been
Yeah.
like reported. But so Sinclair finally found guilty. Was 69 years old and was once again sentenced to life
Nice.
imprisonment with a minimum of 37 years, the exact number of years each family had been without their daughters. So, um, yeah, because he was sentenced 37 years after the crime.
Damn.
Yeah,
You, sir, may fuck off and never return.
right? So at the age of 69, he's sentenced to 37 years. He would be 106 years old before being considered eligible for parole.
Is he still
Uh,
alive?
No, he is not. Sinclair, who was branded a beast by Helen Scott's father, died in his cell in 2009, and this is my favorite thing ever.
Okay.
Died in 2009 at age 73 after suffering several strokes the previous year that left him incontinent and bedbound.
Oh, damn.
Just like pooping on himself all day. Love it. Yeah, yeah,
For him, that's fine. I love that for him.
yeah. I love that for him. Uh It is believed that Sinclair was responsible for the death of 4 other young women between 1977 and 1978. And if this
Damn.
is true, he killed at least 6 women within 7 months in the year 1977 alone.
It seemed like they were all around
Mm-hmm.
a very quick time span when you were saying 77
Yeah.
and 78. I
He
was
is
like,
considered like
wow.
a notorious serial killer in Scotland, which is crazy. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. The last thing I have was just speaking outside the courthouse on the day of the sentencing. Helen's brother Kevin said that the two girls' legacy was to have. I would
Yeah.
say like has changed Scotland's justice system for the better. I think partly because of that double jeopardy law. Uh, and
Okay.
also
I
we
get
have
it.
waited we have waited 37 years for justice, and today that wait has ended, and we finally have justice for Helen and Christine,
God,
which is nice.
finally.
Yeah,
I'm glad some of their family was around to see it.
right? I don't know about the pair. I think the parents were alive. I have a picture. I think it's,
Oh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
called The
Pictures.
Scotts. Helen Scott's brother Kevin, her father Moraine, and niece Amy. Uh,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, I think her mom maybe has passed away then, but yeah, it's nice that laws were reviewed and changed, I think, for the better for it, and
Oh, yeah.
sad that it had to happen in the first place, like with him being acquitted and stuff, but yeah, at least it has a happy ending.
He looks very
And
unassuming. Like,
yeah,
I
he
don't
just
know.
kind of
Just a regular dude.
looks like he needs a shower from what I remember. He
Yeah,
looks
the first
kind of
picture is
scrubby.
very 70s. Like,
Yeah.
the hair, and then there's an, open collar, a little bit
Oh yeah,
V-neck
the
with
picture of
hair
him like
sticking
later
out.
on, he looks like any father you would see at Home Depot. Like
I'm trying. Yeah.
he's wearing a white t-shirt that's like got long sleeves basically to his elbow, wearing a black belt with his shirt tucked into his jeans. Like very
Yeah, and I'm like just like trying to think who he reminds me of, because in the first picture I was kind of like
Yeah.
Andy Kaufman-ish, maybe. Maybe that's just the hair. Yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
doesn't look like a. Not that
No.
everybody that is a monster looks the same, but it's just
Right?
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was getting to it and I was like, he was acquitted, and I was like typing everything up, and I hadn't gotten to the part of like his crimes yet. And then I was reading that and I was like, what the hell? How was he ever acquitted?
Bury the lead, guys.
I was like,
Yeah.
really? You're acquitted? You already are serving 2 life sentences for like other shit. Like, just tack on a third. I don't even care. Like, who cares at that
Yeah,
point?
doesn't seem like there's any reforming for that guy.
Yeah, clearly not.
No, he liked it too much.
Yeah, raping and chucking it or
Oh
strangling her and
God.
chucking that 8-year-old down the stairs and then telling her mom she died by accident. Like, ugh.
I almost needed a trigger warning for that one. That was just way out of left field. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's even more brutal. Like,
Yeah, it's like,
okay.
yeah. I'm
Started
sure
young, he
there's
did.
more in-depth stuff about like all of those other crimes he did, but
Yeah, there's
um
probably books about this kind of guy.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Hmm.
I would be interested to learn more about the victims for sure. I would read up on it. Maybe I
Yeah,
will now.
I couldn't really find much more about Christine Eady and Helen Scott, but um
Yeah, that's often the case, unfortunately.
yeah. Mhm.
Damn. They didn't deserve that, that's for sure.
Oh,
That's
no.
like you just want to go out and have your wingman or your wingwoman and then you think, "Perfect, there's two of them?"
Right? Out
Like cuz there
celebrating new
was. Yeah.
jobs
Oh
and
yeah, that
stuff,
part
and then
sucked.
yeah,
Mm.
brutal.
Thanks, I hate it.
You're welcome. I'm
Um
sorry.
I think mine's going to be also dark, but it is very
Fun.
different.
Yay! Makes for a good
Stick with
episode.
us.
Yeah. We'll be
Yeah.
back.
For more child murder.
Oh,
Oh
spoiler.
God.
Spoiler. She spoiled it. Okay. Episode
Right.
over. No.
Welcome back to Castles and Cryptids and Cats and
Yeah.
Dogs. If you have a podcast, you guys know. If you have a pet,
Yeah. You know.
oh, you know. They just like to get up at everything. I hear cats are like that on a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're working there like, what you doing? What's going on? Fenrir came in
Yeah.
and sat pretty much on the chair leg earlier because he'll come and do that. He'll sit like right on your foot because he
Aww.
wants just attention. Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
such a big suck.
Gordo will. I'll be on the couch and I'll have my laptop on my lap. And he will jump up if he sees any space between like my stomach and the laptop. He will jump right there, land right on like my stomach, and then he like crawls and starts nuzzling your head and like he'll
He
he'll
wants
hit.
to be the laptop.
Yeah, he does, and then he'll lay down and then he'll like use his back legs to push my laptop away. Like push it further down. Be like, no. But
I'm
then he lays
stretching
down
and
and
this
he'll
has
like,
got to go.
yeah, he'll put
Yeah.
his head under my chin and like lay there with like his head tucked under my chin, and then he wants to do a little needy paws across
Oh,
me, and
that's cute
yeah,
but painful.
it can be. Yeah, I try and keep his nails really short because he loves needy paws. He'd be making biscuits all day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he sticks his hands in your shoes. That was so
Yes,
cute.
that's my favorite thing.
Oh, it's such
I
a good picture.
I had taken what did I do? Oh, I repainted the laundry room, the ceiling last night, and I
Yeah.
had taken the gross like shoes I have in there, old work shoes, but they have a bunch of like paint and drywall mud like on the bottom of them and stuff now,
Yeah.
and I had them on the floor mat of my door. I was gone for maybe 2 minutes doing something. I think it was just to go to the bathroom. And then I came back and he was sitting on them with his arms in them. And I was like, oh, so cute.
It doesn't take him
Because he
long.
does. No, it was the fastest I've ever seen him be like, feet go in the shoes. Whereas
Like a
his
little
case,
kid wearing the mom's high
yeah,
heels.
like he puts his whole upper arms like up to his shoulders
Yeah.
in the shoes and he just sits there on them and it was so cute. I just came in because it was dark too. I just come around the corner, you can barely see him and he's just sitting there like I wasn't in there, nothing. He's just like shoes.
This is where they go, right?
Yeah, I put my feet in the shoes. Yeah. Anyway, I'm ready for well, I was gonna say I'm ready for child murder, but that sounds bad.
I mean, there's going to be a lot going on. We're going back into Scottish history, so, and it's
You
like,
told me it was old case, so
yeah, medieval. So that's going to get pretty bloody.
yeah.
And maybe even sound a little familiar. We're going to go in the way back machine, as they say, to the Black Dinner of 1440.
Not the Red Wedding of whatever.
No, but maybe
Black
similar.
Dinner. Okay.
That didn't take you long to pick up that there's a similarity in the name.
It was just like
I mean, we all know that he had to be that Game of Thrones writer had to be inspired from some things, and he was inspired from some things from history. So
okay.
maybe.
Wow. I was like right on the nose.
You
You were right on the nose with Double Jeopardy. When you said Double Jeopardy, I was like, oh shit, she's on to me.
I've seen the Ashley Judd movie. Pat made me watch it. It was good. All right. Okay, mine starts with a quote. So, King James II, and then it has his lifespan, 1430 to 1460, of the line of Stuarts, the son of King James I and Joan Beaufort, but succeeded his father at the age of 16 after James I was assassinated in, it says AD, but what is that now? BC? You know.
I think so.
If we try to use the secular, non-religious version.
Yeah.
Sorry. After James I was assassinated in 1437 in a sewer tunnel, whilst trying to flee from Sir Robert Graham of Kinport and a group of conspirators.
Okay.
That's from Heritage Daily. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of assassinations and stuff in those times.
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
Okay, so basically King James I was assassinated in a sewer, and now we have King James II, who is very young.
Yeah, and he's gonna die at age 30, I guess.
Yeah, he doesn't live very long.
It's just like, you're like 1630 to 1660. I was like, oh, that's short.
Yeah. And he's what? He's 7 when his dad dies too. So
Jeez, okay.
The regent who led the government until the king reached age of maturity was named Cersei Lannister. No. Archibald Douglas, 5th Earl of Douglas. Archibald, good old Archie, was leader of the Black Douglases and next in line after the Boy King.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas the one goes, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage.
I have been listening to some more of the soundtrack, and it makes me want to rewatch some of the earlier seasons anyway.
Yeah.
You like listen to a song, it's like, oh, this one's called Coming Back to Winterfell, and I can just feel it. I'm there. Okay. The Black Douglases was another name for the Clan Douglas, an ancient and noble house of the Scottish Lowlands. Lowlands? I know we say Highlands. Anyway, never said it out loud before.
Mm.
But they were a very prominent and powerful family. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Oh, I put some hard stuff in to read because I do that. I thought it was kind of fun fact. The Scottish Gaelic translation of the name for the lowlands means place of the foreigner. So
Oh,
yeah, it said like it was just Wikipedia said the lowlands in Scots Lowlands or Lawlands, and then Scottish Gaelic something that I don't know how to pronounce and gives you something that doesn't tell you really how to pronounce it.
fun. Love
But
those.
that's the one that translates to place of the foreigners.
Mm.
And it's a cultural and historical region of Scotland. Um, top half, bottom half, basically. It says
Mm.
culturally, the lowlands and the highlands diverged from the late Middle Ages into the modern period when the lowland Scots replaced Scottish Gaelic throughout most of the lowlands. So they totally separated and even ended up, with more of a separate dialect.
Yeah, I've heard of that before.
Lots of lots of fighting, I don't know. And
Yeah.
then people are like, "Oh, you're from this region and we're from this region and we'll look down our nose at you."
They have
Kind
that in like Ireland and stuff, don't
of.
they? Yeah.
I love our Scottish listeners. I feel like they're, Celtic peoples, very cantankerous. So, I think we can get a little hot under the collar if you got that Irish or
Yeah.
Scottish blood. Um, they don't have a podcast anymore, but one of the first people that reached out when we first had our podcast Instagram was from the Salty Speculation podcast that is no longer, but he's from Scotland. He was just very sweet and, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
getting me to introducing me to some other podcasts on there and stuff like that. So very nice people in my experience too. With a very bloody history.
Yeah.
And the Douglas clan was huge. The Douglas clan leaders spread out into lands all over. Oh, I wrote this wrong. Sorry. The Douglas clan leaders spread out into lands all over Scotland, quote, throughout the borders, Angus, Lothian, Moray, and even into France and Sweden, end quote.
Mm.
Many consider their power and influence as not only a threat to rival families, but to the throne as well.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, if you got money and influence and millions of children.
Yeah, you just invade, right?
Oh, God. Yep. Did a lot of that, I think. Their clan motto is Jamais arrière, because it's French for some reason.
Yeah. I was
It
gonna
means
say it. Just
it means never behind. I don't ask me why it's French. I know the Frasier's motto is also French. That's true. They mention it in Outlander, but it's actually true. The Frasier's motto is Je suis prêt, which means always ready or I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think they might have some overlap in the family's history or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just thought they were kind of interesting. The Douglas clan, I have a little bit more. The first one to get called the Black, because they're called the Black Douglases, was, quote, the good Sir James Douglas or Douglas the Black. He hung out with Robert the Bruce, which we learned about in my other Scottish segment way
Okay, I
back
was like,
when.
that sounds familiar. Why do I know?
Because, well, he's a big fighter in their history, and then
Hmm.
he sat in the cave and watched the spider, and he thought, oh, try
Ah,
again.
okay, yeah.
um, so he fought with Robert the Bruce and learned some valuable lessons during some of their defeats, like how to employ guerrilla warfare tactics.
Oh, fun.
Gorilla. No. The other kind of gorilla. The one that's always been a funny name sounding to me. But like
Yeah.
they had a little quote about it. About how there was fighting. By the time the fighting flared up again in the spring of 1307, they had learned the value of guerrilla warfare, known at the time as secret war, using fast-moving, lightly equipped and agile forces to maximum effect against an enemy often dependent on static defensive positions.
Yeah.
Um, which kind of is interesting because it's like a little bit more stealthy than like a big
Yeah.
massive army can be.
You have to like hold the top of like a hill or something like that and hold your ground. You can be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, one battle I read about was like I think they just climbed up the side of a cliff to take the surprise and take the high ground.
Oh
It's just
wow.
like, whoa, something you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Yeah. So those are the Douglas dudes that Archibald hailed from. But then, so he's the regent, the boy king, he's growing up, and then he went and died in 1439 and threw the power balance all out of whack again. Jeez.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. I can't remember how he died. Oh, he's probably killed from some illness or someone took him out. I can't say.
Yeah. That's what most of the deaths were.
Right.
Poisoned or assassinated some other way or
Infected toenail that Oh god.
yeah.
Sorry, I just had like a flashback to when I was in travel and this lady told me kind of the horror story about how her husband was in the hospital in the States and he was doing fine, but then I think literally some infected toenail like ended up giving him gangrene and it just took a turn for the worse and he died. And I just had a weird flashback to
Jesus.
that. And I was like, oh shit, that stuff can still, like,
Yeah.
if you're not careful, shit can still happen.
If it gets in your blood or your bones or anything like
Yeah.
that, you're basically done. Like,
Yeah, blood poisoning or
yeah.
sepsis. Ugh.
Yeah,
Sorry about
dangerous.
that. To traumatize you guys too. Okay, so then at this time they have kind of three guys sharing the power.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, unofficially, whatever. William Crichton, First Lord Crichton and Lord Chancellor of Scotland, Sir Alexander Livingston of Callendar, and James Douglas, Earl of Avondale. Sorry, so fancy.
Yeah, I've heard of Avondale.
Right? That sounds familiar. Makes me think of Shakespeare. Anyway, um, apparently the Queen Mother, like the Boy King's mom, Joan Beaufort, also was kind of had her hat in the ring. Probably she's there too. Maybe trying to get any power that anyone will leave over for her.
Yeah.
So these men invite some other Douglases over to party or to have a lovely little dinner with the boy King James.
To sup with him.
I did put sup at one point. I
Love
love
it.
it. Okay, it might be in my next sentence. They invited 16-year-old William Douglas, 6th Earl of Douglas, that's hard to say, and his younger brother David to Edinburgh Castle to sup with the king.
Yay.
And that sounded British, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Once seated and ready to eat all their lovely suckling pig or roast pheasant, biff roast.
Biff roast. You gotta biff that roast till it's medium rare. So terrible.
Oh god.
We'll never live that down.
Protect the biff roast. They're alive.
No, not the biff roast. I need the biff roast.
Okay. Once they're ready to eat, they are presented with a plate in front of them that simply had a black bull's head on it.
Oh.
This was placed before William, and it was a sign that death was coming.
Okay. Give them a warning. That's ballsy.
Yeah, that's how the story goes anyway. Hopefully they were, well, according to the legends, they were dragged out and up to the top of Castle Hill, where they were either put through a mock trial or just executed. One
Probably
of
just
the two.
executed.
Yeah, basically the main account that we originally learned it all from was called, oh god, the Auchinleck Chronicle. Unless that's
Mm.
Gaelic, in which maybe the pronunciation is something completely different.
Yeah.
But it lacks any real details on the tragic end of the boys, simply saying that they were, quote, put to deed. Deed. It's like Deid. It's like when I see them
Oh.
write the Scottish and they're saying head. Like, you dumb head, you clot head, and it's like, you clot heed, and I'm like, oh, it's Scots. That's how it would sound
Yeah.
with their little accent. I love it. So yeah, they were killed. Some way or another. Other accounts throughout the years have either speculated or embellished, saying that they were like put through the trial, accused and convicted of speaking treason against the king, then beheaded on the spot as they pled for their lives.
Hmm.
So we'll never really know the details, probably, but
Yeah.
suffice to say, it was horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But if this was an attempt to bring down the Douglas family, it didn't really seem to work. It didn't stop the Douglases from taking up many positions in the Scottish court and holding like government jobs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm like, there's still more to the family.
Oh, yeah. They just killed a couple of boys, basically. So, what was the real motive? Well, when Archibald Douglas had died, it not only took away the Boy King's regent, but also left the Douglas clan because he was the regent to the king, but
Yeah.
he was also the head of the Douglas clan at the time.
Okay.
So that left the very young, very vulnerable heir, the 15-year-old William Douglas. So
Hmm.
that's who they
Now he's
just
in
killed.
charge.
Well, that's who they just offed. He was heir
Oh.
to all their lands and wealth of the Douglas clan, and he and his younger brother have just been killed. And yeah, it's just like, they were so young. Why? Exactly. They're like, the theory is if you were killing off your rivals, why kill the two young heirs, which only left their great uncle James of Avondale as the patriarch and leader of the clan? So
Hmm.
some think it was James himself.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's in the pocket of the other side.
Kind of stands to reason. Like, he's the one that has the most to gain. He's
Yeah.
going to be the head of the clan. Uh, Also, just gonna put this out there, his nickname was James the Gross because he was obese. So that's
Oh.
not super great or nice, but that's what they called him. Um, and he was actually in an alliance with the first William we talked about, William Crichton. The
Hmm.
three guys that were sharing the power. Him and William and that other dude. Um,
The other two.
were, yeah, looking after the Boy King. And so this was in the same year. This quote I found: by 1440, their grouping had secured ascendancy by kidnapping and imprisoning the young James II. So that happened also as well, apparently, which I didn't find much
Jeez.
more on. But basically, I was like, so James Douglas went from helping manage the Douglas clan estates, because you got to have like a laird, which is like a Scottish lord, to look after the castle, the farmers,
Yeah.
whatever, all your 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 people, your village people. You know what I mean? um, then he went to clan leader. Then he went to kidnapping the king. All in this short
Yeah.
amount of time. Hello, Gordo.
Yeah, he just woke up. Now he's cleaning behind his ear because it's so dirty. Got so dirty while he slept.
How did it get so dirty?
Keep behind my ears. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yes, Mom. So maybe the boys were either killed to keep them from somehow threatening the Crichton-Avondale alliance, or to get the actual lands that the nephews technically held.
Hmm.
Who knows, but they clearly had some aspirations. Gordo tail.
You're something else tonight. Oh.
Now he's staring at you, wanting your attention. Or he does it in more of a distracting way.
Yeah.
Fenrir has a tactic where he goes and sits right in front of the TV and stares at Pat too. If he's really ready to go for a you know what.
Oh, yeah.
And then also extremely suspiciously, James Douglas did nothing to avenge the murders of his nephews, his great nephews, which I just noted as a Scot and a man of those times. Yeah, it was
Yeah, that's
very
a little
unusual.
weird.
Jamie freaking Fraser would never let that happen. I almost said Jamie Lannister. I'm stuck in Game of Thrones now. My fandoms are mixing. I'm confused.
What is this, a crossover?
Where am I? What year is this? Stories were even spread. Like, there's like rumors basically trying to make the murder seem somehow justified, saying things that like William was a threat and destabilizing the realm. He was a loose cannon.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, this 16-year-old boy. As for James Douglas, I don't know exactly what happened after he kidnapped the king, but I do know he died not too long after this. In 1443, actually. He died on March 24th, 1443, in Abercorn Castle, West Lothian, Scotland. He was 72 years old.
Oh, that's a long time. We don't know.
What?
How old was he when he kidnapped the king?
Well, that was in 1440, so he must have been 69?
Oh, okay.
He was old then. Everybody that was dying is very young, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then, just the rest of that quote from Genealogy Online. He's buried in the year 1443 in St. Bride's Kirk, Douglas, Lanarkshire, Scotland. Does sound very Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the end of the revenge taking. Oh no. In 1452, when James was but a 22-year-old king, he invited William Douglas, 8th Earl of Douglas, to Stirling Castle and promised him it was safe to come, only for a little dinner.
Yay. Sounds great.
Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
But he betrays William. He accused William, the Earl of Douglas, of conspiring with John MacDonald and Alexander Lindsay, because why not throw some more names in there?
I was like, I'm already half lost. How fucking know?
I'm not surprised. There's a lot going on here. A lot of Douglases.
Yeah.
He drew his dagger, dirk, they sometimes call it. And he stabbed the Earl 26 times.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I know. And so he died. Which, like, you're already king. Anyway.
Yeah.
And from DundeeScottishCulture.org, quote, after an intermittent civil war between the Crown and the Douglas clan, the Parliament of Scotland declared the Douglas lands forfeit and permanently annexed them to the Crown, along with many other lands, finances, and castles.
Jeez. Okay. So now they're just done as a clan.
Right?
Jeez.
Just
You
like
own
stomp
nothing.
them down.
Yeah.
Just kind of sounds like what the British did to the Scottish after the wars of the Stuarts. And my final quote on this is: "The Black Dinner and the Massacre of Glencoe in 1692 would later serve as the inspiration for the Red Wedding in George R. R. Martin's A Song of
So
Ice and Fire
damn it,
series."
sorry, I spoiled it right off the bat. You got like 2 sentences in. I was like, Red Wedding!
I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like keep it a secret, but like I think it's gonna be pretty obvious what it's what is the inspiration for. And if you are curious about the Massacre of Glencoe, the other part of the inspiration, although I didn't write any notes on it, I had a little book that I have about Scotland that had a little story about it.
Oh.
I did.
Yeah.
Because we're only 35 in to my part. My
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, this would be the shortest you'd ever had.
I mean, it's you don't get a lot more details when it's historical, unless you start falling into the rabbit holes of, well, I kind of did with the clan and talking about some of that stuff, like how they are. But this was from, it's not an Outlander series book, but it's adjacent to Outlander. It's called The Clanlands Almanac. So kind of like, if there's a farmers have an almanac that like helps them kind of know about, I don't know, how the coming year's going to be or whatever the hell. This one was all about different significant dates. Like they went each month and they did the significant dates in history in Scotland and different battles. Yeah. Nice. And they like every month they'd be like whiskey of the month or like just different things. It's cute. So yeah, it was a really fun read. Pat got it for me for Christmas, so
nice.
I enjoyed it, and it had a little section on from February. The battle of the month was the Glencoe Massacre. It was almost a St. Valentine's Day massacre because it happened on the 13th of February, 1692. And it's this one is one of the books written by the two of the guys from Outlander too, Graham McTavish and Sam Heughan, who plays Jamie and who plays Dougal. Okay, so Graham says, "More of an attempted genocide than a battle. For those of you who've read Clanlands," which I haven't, it's their other book, "the Glencoe Massacre is one of the standout familiar stories to even non-Scots. The brutal slaying of innocent MacDonalds at the hands of the evil Campbells in the middle of the night."
Oh.
Evil Campbells.
Campbell's
chicken soup. Yeah. Now, while we have previously shown that there were very few Campbells actually involved in the massacre, exactly how far did the reach of the Campbells go in the events leading up to that infamous February night? To understand what led to it, we need to widen our view of the time in question. The emerging kingdom of England, Ireland, and Scotland didn't want a Catholic king. Unfortunately, the current monarch, James II, different James II,
yeah,
200 years later.
It's all the like Bible names, everything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was a James II we talked about in the Witches one. And I was like, oh, he was king of Scotland and Ireland? Whatever. I got very confused also. That might be this guy. They didn't want a Catholic king. Unfortunately, the current monarch, James II, was showing increasing signs of a fondness for burning incense and Latin, i.e. being Catholic. The last straw came when he insisted his son and heir go full papal, and given that the country had literally spent generations fighting against the man in the big pointy hat in Rome, this did not go down well. The solution? Well, invasion, of course. William of Orange, who happened to be Charles... I know. It's a real guy.
William of Orange.
Where is Orange? who happened to be Charles I's grandson. I hope you're keeping up. No, we're not. Hopped across the North Sea and took the crown. This would be a little like, oh God, you shouldn't say that. He said this would be a little like Harry and Meghan launching an invasion from Hollywood to snatch the crown from the aged hands of Queen Liz.
Oh God.
Oh no, she's dead now.
She did.
Rest her soul. Um, James fled to the continent, but crafty old William was married to James's Protestant daughter. Fled to the continent. That must mean America.
Yeah.
Protestant's daughter Mary and made her co-regent. He says, I know, it's fiendishly complicated. Put simply, William took the opportunity, James went into exile, and Britain remained very, very Protestant. Meanwhile, in Scotland, many were loyal to James because he was of Scottish descent. He may never have spent any time there, probably hated whiskey, and couldn't speak Gaelic, but that didn't matter to the clans. He's one of us, they bellowed. Except some of the clans could see who was likely to be the winning team. Not me. Enter John Campbell of Breadalbane? Breadalbane? I'm not too sure about that. It's a weird one. He could see that William was probably the horse worth backing, but he hedged his bets and supported James as well. Hence Campbell's nickname, Slippery John. Breadbane's plan was to prove he was more loyal than Slippery by bringing the clan chiefs together to pledge allegiance to William. But it was going to take cash, lots of it. He persuaded the government to give him £12,000 for each clan chief, a fortune. So Slippery John organized a big old meetup of the chiefs at Ackladder Castle on 30th of June, 1691. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I am sorry. Come to Ackladder. That can't be it. I've got a proposal for yous, and I've also got stacks of cash. They wrote yous. Present at the meeting was Alistair McIan, chief of the MacDonalds of Glencoe. To put it bluntly, McIan was on the bones of his arse. He was broke, resorting to that old Scottish pastime of stealing cattle from his neighbors.
Boo.
Leave those cows alone. Also, when I was editing last week's and we were talking about invisible cows, and then you said something about cataloging, and I was like, cataloging in my head. But we
I
didn't pick
cannot
up
even
on it.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you meant it as like a pun, but I took it as one. Oops. Stealing cattle from his neighbors. These neighbors included John Campbell, who was not happy about this, not in the slightest. So he reminded McIan at the meeting that he owed him money for the cattle he had stolen, far more than $12,000. You see, slippery. McIan was angry, not only about the cash, but also the risk. If James II returned to find the clans all cozied up with his sworn enemy, what then? So Slippery John proposed a second oath. If King James did come back, they'd tear up the oath to William. Sounds reasonable. But the clan chiefs weren't completely naive. They asked for a letter from James giving them permission. Meanwhile, James, who was holding out for French help to mount an invasion, finally did send his permission on 12th of December. With the deadline for the oath on the 31st of December, 1691, there was plenty of time, right? Wrong. Anyone familiar with the postal service will know this was a risky strategy indeed. Enter stage right, John Dalrymple, Secretary of State for Scotland. He was a lowlander who hated Highlanders, particularly those from the Lochaber region. James II's letter was intercepted by Dalrymple's spies, and the contents sent JD into an apoplectic rage. He resealed the letter and sent it on its way, and on the 21st of December it arrived in Edinburgh. From there, it had to reach remote areas of the Highlands and go from chief to chief, glen to glen in the middle of winter.
Jeez.
Not so easy on horseback.
No, in like the 1600s, it's gonna take forever.
Right? You've got mail. Maybe if it happens to be going your way. Meanwhile, Mr. Dalrymple sent 400 soldiers to Fort William in anticipation of the clan chiefs failing to meet the signing deadline. It's not too difficult to imagine him literally rubbing his hands with glee. On the 30th of December, Cameron of Lochiel received the letter with only 24 hours left to get it across Rannoch Moor and on to Glencoe, where MacIan was probably wearing out his leather shoes by furiously pacing up and down. With the deadline literally upon MacIan, there was no way he'd get to Inverary in time, so he opted for Fort William to carry it on to, I guess. However, there he was told by the garrison commander, Colonel John Hill, he couldn't accept his oath. You'd better get going to Inverary and see Sir Colin Campbell, pal. So off MacIan trudged through the snow, taking 3 days to get to Inverary, where he was detained by soldiers in Campbell territory. Eventually, he rocked up at Campbell headquarters on the 2nd of January, no doubt panting like a racehorse, freezing his balls off and clutching the letter ready to sign. A little late.
Yeah.
Ugh, you're looking for Sir Colin. He's out of town for 3 days, so if you'll just park yourself in that Campbell Tavern, surrounded by folk who hate your guts, you can see him when he gets home. It must have been a tense few days, and I don't imagine he slept particularly well, his hand prized to his dirk, i.e., dagger. I like it when they call it a dirk.
It just makes me think of a TV show I watched called Dirk Gently's Private Detective Agency.
Dirk Gently.
And I'm like, so I get sidetracked and I'm like, oh. This is like such a weird show.
Well, there was also that guy Katie dated on Letterkenny, and they're like, "How come you don't like him, Wayne? You always say it like Dirk."
Yeah.
Such derision. You can really spit that one out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're almost done. Colin returned. Absolutely, MacIan. Totally understand the delay. Could have happened to anyone. Just sign here and we are all good. Phew, I hear you say. The signed oaths were all sent to Edinburgh. Colonel Hill even sent a letter to MacIan stating he was now under protection of the Fort William garrison. Happy days. I'm very confused. There's not a massacre happening. Okay. I read this a while ago. The package. Oh, yeah, here we go. The package arrived with the Privy Council in Edinburgh, but inside was a wee note from the local sheriff wondering if MacIan's signature should be counted. Just asking. There were quite a few powerful Campbell lawyers on the council. They looked at the packet of oaths, looked at MacIan's, looked at the sheriff's note, and said, "Nah, I don't think we can count that one." So 5 days after MacIan had signed the oath, Dalrymple received a letter saying that MacIan's name had been struck from the list due to a technical fault. More gleeful hand-rubbing ensued, and the rest, as they say, is history. 30 MacDonalds slaughtered in the snow at Glencoe. So, was it the Campbells? Yes and no. Sir Colin, Slippery John accepted the signature, the lawyers didn't. Who knows what other shenanigans took place along the way? There were plenty of other clans, Camerons, Glengarry, who wouldn't be sad to see MacIan of Glencoe taken out of the equation. We shall never know. But if your name is Dalrymple, just saying. And the moral, post your letters early in winter, and when the letter does arrive, run.
What? The letter arrives.
So that you get it there in time and don't get killed on a technicality, I guess. I'm sorry. I remember that one being confusing when I first read it, but I thought maybe we could figure it out better together. Their whole
No, there's
history.
too many names.
Too many names. It's always like the slightest things and they'll come to blows. It's like this
Yeah.
one's well, we almost got your name on the list of what good guys, but then at the last minute, nah, we think it doesn't count, and everyone gets slaughtered. It's just so I don't know what's the word meaningless. They just like to fight. Sometimes you think it seems like, and that's why Highlanders did have a reputation for being pretty, bloodthirsty. So
Yeah.
maybe they just
Any
need an
excuse.
excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go watch Outlander. I love Scotland.
Good night. Well, hope you guys
Good afternoon.
enjoyed this episode. And
Yeah.
next week, we are diving back into folklore and
Phew.
probably
Splash.
creatures and stuff again, but we're doing
Oh yeah.
an Irish jig
Diddle-a-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee.
for
I
St.
don't know what that
Patrick's
was.
Day coming up.
Yes.
Yes.
Fuck yes. Next week it's St. Patrick's Day. Next week. No.
The week after.
I'm doing it again. This comes out on
The 10th.
the 10th. That's right. So happy birthday to me this week, and happy birthday to all the rest of you March babies.
Yes.
And we're excited to go back to Ireland. I don't think we've done anything there since you did a haunted castle there.
Yeah, it's been a really long time.
Really long. So we hope you like the Celtic content this month.
Yeah.
Castles and cryptids. CCCC.
Yeah.
CCTV. Oh God. All right. Well, we'll catch you next week.
Yes. Bye.
Don't forget to rate, review, tell a friend, and keep it cryptic. Patreon.
This has been Castles and Cryptids. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and our YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. On our website, you can listen to all of our episodes as well as view pictures for each of our segments. Check out our Patreon page to view all of our tiers and become a Patreon supporter today to unlock monthly bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes content. We are working on an Ask Us Anything. You can submit questions by social media or by email at castlesandcryptids@gmail.com. Do you have a spooky ghost story, a creepy cryptid sighting, or a thrilling true crime tale you would like to share and have us include in a future episode? Send us your listener story by social media or by email. Please include the name that you would like mentioned. Our music is by Kobe Fair. Our logo and artwork is by Antonio Garcia. Thanks for listening.